Good morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ham, coming to you as always from the Spotlight Studios here in Morristown, New Jersey. Along with his partner, Michelle, my guest today is an engaged entrepreneur, content creator, and small business owner who originally left the corporate world in 2019 and moved to Nashville, jealous, to taste their way through the city and document their journey on their Instagram page at Wicked Tasty. Using professional photography and their lively personalities, the page has grown to over 10,000 followers, and the couple has embraced the Nashville hospitality community who helped them along the way. My guest today is Dan Burkard. Dan, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited to join the show.
I'm excited to have you. So, I've mentioned this before. Ish and I, my girlfriend and I, were in Nashville earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
I got the old smoky hat on. I got the Peg Leg Porker t-shirt on because I knew you were coming, and I knew that I needed to try to make me feel like I'm part of your world. But I'd right out of the gate, that hat is sick. Is that like a Wicked Tasty hat, or is that like something else?
It is. It's our OG Wicked Tasty hat. We have 4 different styles. This is the original one that we created. We have a Titans one, a Preds one, and a camo one if you want to feel real Tennessee country.
Real Tennessee. I like that. I like this.
Mm-hmm.
I do this sometimes. I think it's awesome. So I might have to get my hands on one of those hats. But all right. So explain to me how you guys wind up in Nashville, because you were working in corporate America, which a lot of I work in corporate America. I do this as kind of a hobby / supplement to my actual business, but I also work in corporate America. A lot of my listeners work in corporate America. So what were you doing prior to what we're going to get into here in a little bit?
Yeah. So before we moved to Nashville, I spent 5 years in the corporate world working for a company called S&L Financial, which was acquired in 2015, 2016 by S&P Global. So the company that owns the S&P 500, the S&P ratings indices. We also had a data division, and that was the part of the company that S&L was acquired into. So I work specifically with our bank regulatory data set and sold data products to banks. So I spent 5 years doing that, first out of Charlottesville, Virginia, then out of New York City, and then working from my home in Southwest Connecticut, and had a great time there. I loved my colleagues. I loved the work environment. I loved the company, but I just burned myself out traveling way too much. It was a job that required me to get on a plane, fly across country once a month, once every 6 weeks. So I just really got burnt out of the corporate slog, if you will. And so Michelle and I, my fiance, and my girlfriend at the time, we had visited Nashville 3 years in a row. So the first year that we met, we went on a trip together to Nashville, and we said every year we're going to do a different city. But we came down here and we had such a blast that after that trip, we're like, yeah, we're coming back next year. So the same weekend in October, 3 years in a row, we came to Nashville. The last weekend, the last time we came, I was kind of hitting a wall at my corporate job, and we're like, we got a half day to kill. Why don't we just for fun, look at apartments? And she's like, well, I've actually been doing some research. So we had some apartments that we set up some tours with, and found a building that we liked and a unit that we liked. And we told them when that floor plan becomes available, we'll move. And we took 6 months because there's only a few of these floor plans in our building. It became available, and we signed the lease within about 20 minutes of them letting us know that it was available. And we were like, we'll figure the rest out with, the jobs and her job, and me at that point realizing that I'm probably going to be leaving my job to do something else.
Right.
And we just made it happen. So yeah, that's kind of the long story of how we ended up down here in Music City, Tennessee.
Yeah. It's just so cool because I got a lot of respect for people that have just the intestinal fortitude to just go for it, to see something that you want and to, see a place that you would like to live. Cause I live here in New Jersey. I love living in New Jersey. If I, were to move anywhere, maybe it would be Nashville. I don't know. But, it's one of those things where I think that it holds a lot of people back. And you said you were getting burnt out and all that kind of stuff. But I would imagine, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of safety. There's a safety net having a corporate job, then just rolling the dice and being like, we're going to Nashville. I feel like, I know you said that you're going to figure it out, but that had to take some, you make it seem like it was just hey, we're going to do it. But there must have been some really intense convos leading up to that, right?
Yeah, having a steady paycheck is definitely a safety net. And it's definitely a tough decision to walk away from that. But to be honest with you, this is something in the back of my mind, literally since before day one, since I stepped foot in the corporate world, I knew that I wanted to pursue entrepreneurship in some capacity. So I always made it a top priority throughout my time in the corporate world to stock away money and stash away money. So when that time came that an opportunity presented itself for me to jump ship, financially, it wasn't going to be something that would really put a lot of pressure or stress on me. So
Right.
while it is definitely scary to leave that steady paycheck behind, I had put myself financially in the position to do so before the opportunity presented itself.
Well, that's smart. And that you're a finance guy, so you get how that
Mm-hmm.
works. You're not going to go down there with nothing and then figure
Yep.
it out. You
Mm-hmm.
got a little, you got your own safety net, so you don't need
Mm-hmm.
the man. You don't need the man safety net. You got your own. So, so we'll take the story from there. So you get to Nashville, and then you decide to take pictures of food. Is that like basically what I'm understanding from this bio that I'm reading here?
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, I don't even know. Like you mentioned, using professional photography, and that's just Emily being nice in her description of us. We are not professional photographers, or at least definitely were not before we started this page. I bought a camera about a month before we left. I think it's like a Canon M50 is the camera that I use, in case anyone's curious.
Yeah.
Before we left, and it's a pretty decent camera, good for beginners, but I had never picked up a digital camera before. So I used YouTube University to learn about how to use it, how to take good photos. And there was definitely a learning curve, but it became something that like we were like, hey, we're actually like not too bad at this. And that's sort of where we jumped off on things. And as we started going out taking pictures of food, we realized that we didn't want to just be an influencer, quote unquote. I hate that term.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to be seen as someone just going out to restaurants or bars, like looking for a free meal or looking for something to be comped. Like we wanted to actually provide value to these restaurants. And like I said, we sort of had already fallen in love with Nashville. So we are really familiar with the Nashville food and beverage scene down here and how great of a city it is with so many great locally owned and operated restaurants like Peg Leg Porker, like the shirt you got on. So we thought like we need to figure out a way to use this account that we had created at Wicked Tasty to, not just feed ourselves and use it for our own vanity of like having followers and being an influencer. Like how do we use this to actually support and promote these local businesses?
Right. Well, so I find this interesting because I guess this was the start of this entrepreneurial journey, but when you started putting it together, and like also, how do you think of the name Wicked Tasty? Is that because you're from Connecticut, right?
Yeah, we're from Connecticut, and that was
Yeah.
Michelle that actually came up with that name, and she locked down that handle like 2 years before we moved. So we were sitting at a bar one day in Connecticut, and she's just like, one of my friends like has a food Instagram, and it has like 5,000 followers, and this was probably back like 2015 before like being an influencer was even a big thing. So 5,000 followers is like a lot of followers.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know, we like to go out to eat at places, like we like to cook, like why don't we like maybe start one? So she just got this handle, but never posted a thing on it. So when we moved down here, we're like, hey, like, why don't we use that? That's a pretty catchy name. Pretty good name.
It's very catchy. I'll give it to you. That's a very catchy name. I like it. So, and the logo again, I love that logo. It vibes. So, all right. So, like when you decide that you're going to start going out and you got the camera and everything like that, was that like, I know you mentioned the entrepreneurship thing. Was that what you had in mind when you got to Nashville, as like, that's what your entrepreneurship journey was going to be like?
Definitely. Well, yes and no. I knew when I was going to Nashville that this was going to be how we were going to jump into the water, was going to be through this Instagram page. It was going to be a way to get our feet wet. For me in a brand new industry, two brand new industries, really, if you want to think about it, one being like the marketing social media side and two being the hospitality sector. So for me, the whole premise of this Wicked Tasty page was to get myself familiar with the restaurant world and the social media world and kind of go from there. So when I had come down, it wasn't my plan to, grow this page into something that like as itself, as a standalone entity would, pay my bills. But it was a way for me to really try to explore my passions and figure out what I liked and what direction I wanted to take this, and try to see if I could find an in or an opportunity to build a scalable company. Because an Instagram page is, I don't want to say isn't scalable, because there's influencers who have done it, but it's really, really difficult to scale, right. Especially, when you're a bald man and, that's not exactly like the
As a
segment
bald
of
man, I understand
population.
what you're
Yes, yeah,
saying.
that's
Yeah.
not the segment of the population where you could just post a picture of your face and have wake up with 1 million followers. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
realized that there was
Agree.
more to it, and I had to bring some value, other than just photos of food or my beard to the table. So
Are you really bald?
no, I am. Yeah,
Yeah,
been
dude,
bald since about 23.
we're like the same.
Yeah.
We got baldness, beardness. It's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. So we're basically like brothers. We just didn't even know it. So
Mm-hmm.
I also love that you're drinking out of a mason jar right now. That's so Tennessee. I just think that's amazing. So talk to me also about how, like, as I was reading through the stuff that was sent over to me prior to this episode, and hearing you talk and wanting to do more than just be like an Instagram food influencer page, like you said, and build out like a community is what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me how you start to, you're new, you're not from Nashville. Obviously you have like some ideas of what the places are, but you don't really have, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, like real deep root connections there in this place. So how do you begin the process of building trust with these places that you have, that you're highlighting on your Instagram page, and then ultimately, part of your beta test for menu, which we'll get into here in a little bit. Talk to me about that. Like, what was that experience like, trying to be like, walk into a restaurant and say, hey, I'm going to take a picture of this rack of ribs and I'm going to post it on my Instagram. Like, is it just that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. It's really just about creating value and creating more value and more value before we ever ask for anything. We still don't ask for anything. We're open to partnerships with local restaurants if they approach us to, help promote something, but it's not something that we went out and we would, say, hey, like, we would like to come in. Would you comp us a meal and all this and this and this? So for us, it was about going out there and supporting these restaurants by, one, purchasing our own food, and two, promoting it on our page without being asked or requesting permission from them. So it was really trying to build that trust and foundation with them, that, hey, like, we're more than just trying to get a free meal. Like, we actually do care about your restaurant. We also started a blog around the same time, so we were spotlighting restaurants. So at that point, we were reaching out to restaurants, but it was typically after we had gone in, had a good experience, and we had said, hey, like, we came in, we had a great experience. We would love to feature you on our new blog. Like, can you just answer a few of these questions, like, that I had pre-prepared for you? Just, email me over your answers and we'll do a little write-up for you. So it was really just about trying to create value for them and showing them that we're here as a partner for them, as part of this community, and not just someone looking to take advantage of, our status. We didn't even have status at this point as, an influencer with 500 followers or whatever it was back in the summer of 2019 when we launched our page.
Right. Yeah. And that's also interesting. I think that's really cool. Like, providing value is key, so also tell me more about, like, the idea that, or let me rephrase this question before I ask a bad question. So, like, you start to establish trust. You start this page in 2019. Obviously you get to 2020 and, all hell breaks loose and everything shut down and different things like that. So at what point, like, when you start this page, the Instagram page and the blog, and establishing that trust, do you start to see it, mushroom into something that you're like, hey, this is working, like, it's happening? Was there a key moment in that process where you saw it start to turn for the better?
That's a really good question. I can't put my finger on like a specific key moment, but there was a point sort of where we started to hit like a few thousand followers, where we started to notice like a lot more local restaurants, larger restaurant groups in town, national restaurant groups started reaching out to us for partnership opportunities and things like that. So we did sort of hit that point, but also kind of, again, going back to like my creating value before the coronavirus pandemic, I had no idea like that menu was going to be what we were going to transition our business to, and that would sort of be what we'd use to scale and grow our brand. And we'll go more into what menu is in just a few moments for any of your listeners who are not familiar, or who might be joining us late who didn't catch the intro. But I think, like, for me, I had always known, like, I want to not use Wicked Tasty as something that we could charge compensation for, and just really use it as something to just build our brand and build trust within the community, build partnerships, build relationships, and keep it as something that, like, we can always always just have is keep it fun. Like I also just wanted to keep it fun. Like I think once you start charging people money and it becomes a job, like it becomes a little less fun. Like part of what Wicked Tasty is, it is a creative release for us, and it was, you know, something just to have fun and
Yeah.
get to experience Nashville and
Right.
document it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's awesome. I'm jealous that I didn't think of it. So let's talk more like as we progress into 2020, because we mentioned we've tickled menu. We've talked about 2020 a little bit here. So was menu something, and we could explain what it is, but was it something that you had as an idea prior to 2020, or was it something that like you saw things starting in 2020 and you're like, hey, we need to maybe put something out there to help, you know, provide more value and give some different options for these restaurants that may be struggling with, you know, whatever it is that they're struggling with?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this two ways. So leading into 2020, before the pandemic hit, we were in the process of actually launching a photography and videography marketing business down here in Nashville. So we were going to take those skills that we learned from Wicked Tasty and turn that into kind of what we were going to build as our like revenue generating business. So Wicked Tasty again would sort of be like the brand that we kind of showcase and use as like to almost like highlight our work. And then we were going to use kind of our photography business, and I think we were going to call it like Hang 10 Creative, you know, kind of another ode to the hand symbol there.
Yep.
Hang 10 Creative as our video and photography marketing business specifically for restaurants. But yeah, so doing digital menus or picture-based digital menus was definitely not something that was like in the playbook going into 2020 before the pandemic hit. But then when the pandemic did hit and restaurants started reopening after a month or two, after everything had closed down, we noticed that a lot of them had gone to QR menus. And I'm sure you've seen that up in New Jersey too. You know, coronavirus proof or COVID safe, COVID compliant, whatever you want to call it, menus, rather than having to wash menus or use disposable menus. You just put a QR code on a table, tell your guests to use their own phone to scan it. And the user experience of those was pretty awful. Basically taking a 8x11 PDF or, you know, a big menu that was designed to be held, you know, physically, and shrinking it down to this tiny smartphone screen. So it was just really not an optimal way to go out to a restaurant and view their menu. And we're like, there's definitely got to be a way to incorporate what we were going to do before the world stopped, which was the photography piece, and incorporate that into some of this new technology that restaurants are starting to leverage. So that's really where the genesis of menu came around. Right. But a funnier backstory on that. So back in 2017, 2018, my parents were in Dublin, Ireland, and they had gone out to a dinner and they ordered the fish and it came with its head on, and they were a little taken aback by that. It's something I guess that's common over there in Europe, but not as common here in the United States. And so my parents called us after and they were like, yeah, like the meal was great, everything was great, but like it was a little creepy, like having the fish with the head on it. It's like if we had known, we wouldn't have ordered that.
Staring at you the whole time, just like, why are you eating me? Yeah, right.
Yeah. They're like, there needs to be something that like people can see pictures of their food before they eat. And at the time, me and my brother were like, well, yeah, that's what Yelp and Instagram are for.
Yeah.
So we kind of dismissed it at the time. And now it's kind of come full circle where like my mom's like menu's biggest fan. Like every time they go out to eat, she's like, oh my God, like they need menu. Like, I wish I knew like someone at the table ordered this. I wish I saw that on the menu. It looks so good. So it's kind of come full circle. So like shout out to my mom for coming up with this idea, and me and my brother are laughing at her and telling her to learn how to use Instagram back in 2017, 2018, because now it's turned into my full-time job and my business. So
yeah, it's funny how that stuff works.
Yeah, so your parents are always right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just ask them. So talk to me more about like let's really define like what menu actually is, because I know we've talked about it. And you just mentioned kind of the pictures, but explain how it's different than just a QR code scannable menu that you could look on the PDF thing. I mean, talk to me about like how the pictures are integrated into the process. How does that work?
Sure. So we basically built it. So when you scan the QR code, you'll come to a landing page and there'll be like different buttons. So like starters, cocktails, entrees, whatever the categories are on the menu. But when you go into one of those sections, it's laid out almost like an Instagram feed. So you'll sort of scroll through and It's all pictures. So it's pictures and then overlaid on top of the pictures with transparent, kind of a transparent gray background and shading, and white text is the description of the dish, the price, and the title of the dish. So it's almost like you're scrolling through an Instagram feed. So it's very visually appealing, and it's a really easy way to both read what the items are and then to get a quick sense of what the pictures or what the entrees or drinks look like.
Gotcha. So did you like, I mean, are you like an app designer? Like, how did you put this together? Did you have somebody that like working with to kind of develop what the look and feel of it?
So I am not an app designer, but I am scrappy and dangerous enough with some of the tools that are out there on the internet to build my own beta version or MVP, minimal viable product, whatever technological name people want to use for it. But last summer, I used Wix, which is a free website, and it's literally point and click. There is some coding if you have coding capabilities to like do some super creative stuff, but just using their point and click things, I was able to essentially create a beta version. So we had 5 or 6 restaurants around town help us test that out and get feedback from their guests. So I used a platform that was out there, not in the way that it was definitely intended. I don't know that anyone's ever created what I created on Wix. So I think it's pretty cool, but just getting scrappy with what was available and using kind of my limited capabilities to build that. And then once we sort of got the sign off from our beta partners, like, hey, this is working, like, this is really cool. And we started talking to more people like, hey, this is definitely a solution that needs to be out there available to more restaurants. That's when we started looking at like, all right, like we got to invest in getting this built with an actual development team. So we can move it off of Wix, which it was a platform that I had to build and manage everything myself, to have a platform where clients can build their own menus and take me out of the process.
Right. Yeah. I like the scrappy thing because I feel like in many ways I am similar because I have no podcasting experience prior to doing this or website development, which I do, audio editing, audio engineering. I don't do any of that prior to this, but I've figured it out. I've used GarageBand and iMovie, and I'm a Squarespace guy myself because I just found that a little bit easier, a little bit more pricey, but it just, I couldn't figure out Wix. It was just too above my grade, but I had, all these other things that I had to figure out with this, but I like that. I like that. So when you're approaching these businesses, what was like, did you have like an idea in your head, maybe people that had been strong supporters of Wicked Tasty prior, of like who you were going to go to kind of be those beta testers? And did you ever get any like, nah, this isn't for us kind of response?
I got a ton of, nah, this isn't for us kind of response. But honestly, like I blame that more on myself being just a terrible cold calling salesperson and also being really confused about what I was even offering them at the time. Then it being a knock on the product and what we actually have today. Like, I think I just was walking into these restaurants and not even knowing really myself like what the product was. Like I knew like what it was, but I was going in and I was trying all these different like angles, like, oh, I think it can do this, I think it can do that, like rather than just like going in and be like open and upfront with them, like, hey, like I built this in my garage, not really, but this is something that I built. It's not professionally developed, it's a total beta product. I have no idea if it's going to help your business or not, but I believe it will, and it's something that's cool, different, will set you apart. If I'd gone in with a pitch like that, I think I would have had a much better success rate than me going in and like changing the story every single time to like try to feel them out and like see what worked. But yeah, there was a ton of rejection. And I think I just confused the hell out of a lot of people when I spoke with them.
I love that. I love that. And then, but talk to me about like the importance, because I have a couple over here, but your beta testers, the importance of them saying yes and like taking a chance on you. And does that go back to the trust and everything in the community aspect that you had built with them from Wicked Tasty?
110%. I mean, everyone that was part of my beta partners was either someone that appeared on my podcast, someone that we had just gotten to know because we dined at their restaurant a bunch, or it's just people that we had featured on Wicked Tasty or just given a lot of love to on Wicked Tasty. And those were just relationships that we had developed, and laid the groundwork for a year before we had approached them with this. So I do want to shout out all of those businesses right now, if I can.
Yeah,
just take a moment. So Stock and Barrel, they were the first ones to be a beta tester. So huge shout out to Lacey and Shannon there for taking a shot on us. And then also shout out to a few of our other early beta testers, Mickey's Nashville, Avo, Honeyfire, Daddy's Dogs, the Mac Shack, Fat Bottom Brewery, and Peg Leg Porker. So I think I hit everyone there. So they've all been instrumental and huge in giving me feedback and letting me get my product tested with their guests. So that was huge. It's been huge.
Was there ever, like, when you're getting this feedback, and if this is going to like divulge information that you can't share in public, then please don't feel like you need to answer. But was there ever feedback that you got from some of these restaurants that you were like, oh my God, like I didn't even think about that. That's a great idea. We definitely need to implement that into the real version.
Yeah, absolutely. Like part of the reason why I knew I needed to build out our platform and move it off of Wix was because it was a big thing that people were rejecting me on, and something else that a lot of my beta partners were like, come on, this would really be helpful, which was having them have the ability to manage and update their own menus on their end. So we had the only login through Wix was through me, and all of the menus were under like the same website and the same account. So I wasn't going to just give that to a restaurant and tell them, hey, just manage this one page. It just would have gotten too sticky. So that's when I knew. I was like, all right, we're starting to get traction with beta partners. They're all asking for this. A lot of people I think aren't taking me seriously because it's a platform that we built on Wix. Like we don't have our backend portal. Like I'm telling them I'll have to do all this stuff for them. So that was huge. Like that was like the first big thing that I learned from them was like, we need to move this onto our own platform. And that was feedback that I think I heard from like every single one of our initial partners.
Right. So one of the things I always like to ask, and we've had entrepreneurs on the show, we've had, a lot of different people on the show. And one of the things that I like to ask, and I think that this is a good question for you, and usually we do it towards the end, but we're going to do it right now. As far as like goals, so what are some things that we can even just do like the next year or so? What are some things that you're hoping to accomplish with Menu? Get it into more restaurants, expand the platform. Like, what are some things you're getting into different locations in the country? How does that work? What are you looking to do?
Yeah, my first goal, and really this is like what I'm focusing on now, is just getting paying clients on the platform. We are finally at the finish line with our development, which I'm really excited about. And by the time your audience is listening to this, we're recording this in June here. I hope that's okay for me to say.
Oh yeah. We're recording in June. I'm pretty sure this is going to post in August sometime.
Yeah, so I'm hoping by the time August, we'll definitely be done.
Right.
But yeah, so we're finally wrapping up our development now, which I'm really excited about. So the first step is to go and get some clients that will actually pay for this, because we've sort of proved the value, I think, with our beta clients, but to really confirm the value, we need someone to actually pay for it. So that's really what I'm focused on. And I had these grand goals last summer when we came up with this idea about all right, by the end of this year, we're going to be in 5 cities across the country, blah, blah, blah. And it's honestly, at this point, I just want to grow this, take the foot off the gas just a little bit and really focus on growing here in Nashville. Really put my time and resources into partnering with our local restaurants here to grow this and listen to them and get feedback from them, because I think in order to scale this to other cities, I need to sit here and just hear what they have to say, what's working on this platform, what's not working on this platform, what can we do better, how can we improve it for them. So I think, while I had this great vision when we started this, that we're going to scale this thing, we're going to have all these great features and things by the end of 2021. At this point, is really just getting it out there and just listening. That's my goal, is to listen to as many people as I can, get it into as many local restaurants as we can, and then figure out a roadmap for 2021 that involves the next generation of the platform, and then also cities that will grow this into regionally and hopefully across the country at some point.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So one of the other questions, as you were talking about that, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, so I don't know why I thought of this question now, but talking about getting feedback. So when we're talking about these different kinds of restaurants, and Peg Leg being one, because we've had Carrie on the show, so we'll have him as an example, and then take any one of the other ones that are not that type of restaurant. Maybe they're a bar, maybe they're whatever it is. Is there a different approach that you need to have to each individual type of place? Or is it more just kind of just the structure of it fits? It's just a matter of a little nuances here and there.
I think there's definitely going to be a different approach and a different value proposition for different types of restaurants. So for like a restaurant like Carrie's, which is more of a counter service type restaurant, it's going to be different than Stock and Barrel, who actually is right next door to Carrie's restaurant, which is a sit down restaurant. And it's going to be different from a establishment that's more alcohol beer first, where someone's going and thinking about drinks and not food. So I think for every restaurant that we're speaking to or bar that we're speaking to, there is going to be a different approach. But I think that with the tools that we've built into the platform, and we haven't even actually talked about like what's in it for the restaurants. So I could touch on that in a minute, but I think with the tools that we built for the platform, within the platform, there's going to be value regardless. It'll just be about working with them to figure out what they're trying to accomplish and get out of it, and figure out how we can help them extract that value.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's good. What was the other thing that you were going to mention? You were going to touch on in a minute.
Yeah, kind of what the benefit for the restaurant. So
yeah, sorry, I heard it and I was like, oh, I missed it, and so now I mean, I'm a pro, but sometimes I miss a couple things here and there, so I apologize. But please,
that's all good. Yeah, it's always tough to describe menu too, because like it's tough like knowing who my audience is. So I'm going to assume that your guests probably aren't as many. Aren't restaurant owners and more likely restaurant diners. So that's kind of why I went on that approach with like, it's a picture-based menu. But when I'm out speaking to restaurants, the picture-based menu is a cool selling feature, and it's definitely a point that differentiates us from other like digital menu services that are out there. But what we're really prioritizing and focusing on with restaurants is the data aspect. So at S&P, like I mentioned, to kind of bring this full circle back to my corporate world, my corporate job, I understand the power of data, and that data is really important, and data helps businesses move forward and make more strategic and better strategic decisions. So what we're doing with Menu is we're actually providing them insights into who their guests are. So anytime someone comes into their restaurant and scans that QR code, we're able to help provide them information on their demographics, so like their age and their gender. We're able to give them information on what items are most popular, so what items guests are looking at and clicking at on their menu. So all of these data points are things that restaurants don't really have a great insight into currently, especially local restaurants. Of course, a place like Applebee's or Chili's or a restaurant like that, they're going to have that whole marketing and analytics team that are capturing that data and that really understand that data. But Peg Leg Porker, which is a one location restaurant, even though they do have a couple of great folks that work on the marketing side, they still don't have tools that give them that data and that information easily.
Right.
So we're providing them that info so they can be more strategic in their branding and their operations.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, because that's one of the things I was thinking as you were talking about that, is just like, maybe how to structure the menu. Like maybe you're not putting your stuff up at the front. Like if you're scrolling, obviously you want your big ticket items or whatever at the top, or like if people have to go all the way down and whatever it is. I think that that's really interesting and a cool way to start integrating some analytics and some data into improving just not only the customer experience, but how the restaurant presents its stuff to that, and makes the most of what they have to offer the public. So do you ever, and this is a very like, broad question. So do you ever like stop and think that you've been in Nashville now for 2 years, right? 2 years. And like looking at the community that you've been able to build and this like platform that you've been able to establish in just a 2-year span, where one of those years, I mean, I know Nashville was a little bit different than us here in New Jersey as far as like approach to COVID and all that kind of stuff. But do you ever just stop and think like, wow, like we put together something that's really cool in a very short amount of time? And then does that get you excited for what the future could possibly hold for both Wicked Tasty and Menu?
100%. I actually had a similar conversation a few months ago on another podcast I was on. And like, I was talking about something very similar where it's like, when you look forward and like you kind of asked me like what my goals are, like you have all these big ambitions, right? And you could tend to get overwhelmed or discouraged when in the short term you feel like you're not reaching those ambitions. But then if you actually take a moment to look backwards and say like, all right, like over the last year, over the last 6 months, over the last 2 years, whatever it is, like look at how much I've actually accomplished. It actually is pretty amazing. And that's like advice for anyone that feels like they're stuck or like feels like discouraged about something. It's like, look backwards and like, you'll be amazed if you take a second to look and realize what you accomplished. I bet that like what you've actually accomplished are things that you might not have even realized you were capable of,
Right.
So
that was a fantastic answer, by the way. I mean, that could have been our under the spotlight segment right there, but hopefully you didn't, get it all out in the open. But all right, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Are you ready?
Sure.
So talk to me, give me, like, if I'm going to go to Nashville, what are
Mhm.
some places that I need to go to? And I'm not asking for like the super touristy ones. I'm asking like give me a couple restaurants that, maybe are like a little bit off the beaten path, like maybe not, staples of the community, because I mean, a lot of people that do go to Nashville and are familiar with it, with the city, know what some of those places are. But give me some of the ones that are maybe a little bit more unique. There may be some of your favorites if you want to give those away.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to start with a music venue
Okay.
to get music at, because I think there's a lot of people that come to Nashville who come for the music scene and end up just on Lower Broadway.
Yeah.
And while that's fun to scream your face off at 2 a.m. when you're blackout drunk,
Yes, it's fun.
there's there's a lot of super talented artists in Nashville, and something that we honestly didn't. I'm embarrassed to like admit this, but like we honestly didn't even realize this until we went to the listening room for the first time, which is the place I'm mentioning.
We went to the listening. We actually went.
You did.
We saw the
Yeah.
song Suffragettes at the listening room. It
What
was
did you think?
epic. It was
Yeah.
so cool. The food was actually awesome, and just like the whole vibe. And that was still like before they started, like they fully opened up.
Yep.
Like we were still kind of at whatever capacity they were operating at. But I mean, the song Suffragettes crushed it, and it was just an awesome experience. So that's yeah. Keep going. I just plugged it, but
yeah,
you keep going.
Yeah. But like before we came to Nashville, like I honestly just assumed that, and maybe this is just my East Coast big city bias, kind of growing up around New York City, but like
Right.
I just assumed most music was produced in LA or New York City,
Yeah.
country music or otherwise. It wasn't until I came to you'd always heard like, oh, Nashville's Music City, it's where country music was. Like I thought this is just like where they did the award ceremonies and things like that, because
Like
it's
old school, like Johnny Cash
right, exactly.
and guys like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So like
Yeah.
I didn't realize like, no, like first of all, like a lot of these huge stars live here. To begin with, we saw Kelsey Ballerini at the listening room the other night. She came out on stage for a guest appearance. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
And a lot of these songs you hear on the radio are written by people here in Nashville, like, people that you've never heard their names, but they're really talented songwriters. Most of them are talented performers as well. And they write songs for Blake Shelton, Luke Bryan, Dierks Bentley. So it's crazy to have that talent here in Nashville, and people go down to Broadway, where I think a lot of them probably do play because they got to earn their way, and you can make a lot of money playing on Broadway. But if you want to hear people play their original live music, songs that they've written, the listening room 110% is a place you need to go. Really easy to get tickets to if you buy them in advance. So if when you're coming to Nashville, go online. They usually sell them about a month out. Buy tickets. $15 is usually what the cost is for a show. Super affordable. You have to spend $15 on beer when you're there. Pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
Or food, whatever it is. But yeah, so that's a place that you must go, that not a lot of people, for whatever reason, spend the time to go. It seems like there's a lot of locals that go there. So hopefully they don't let the cat out of the bag, but definitely a cool spot to listen to live music.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about like food spots?
Yeah, food spots. So
that's like your bag. I mean, you got to be the food guy. Yeah, give it to me.
I'm gonna give like a couple like Nashville like staples, and just kind of a couple under the radar spots and a couple cocktail places. So
ooh, I love this.
Arnold,
I'm gonna start writing this stuff down. Here you go.
Did you go to Arnold's Country Kitchen when you came to town? It's right around the corner from Peg Leg Porker. Which obviously go to Peg Leg Porker if you come to Nashville. But Arnold's is one of the original meat and threes here in Nashville. James Beard, Warren Whitting restaurant. It's lunch only. Really great spot to get meat and three, which is meat and three sides. And that's a Nashville staple that I didn't know anything about before we came down here. So that's a really cool spot to check out, walkable from downtown. If you want to get in the car and drive a little bit, Daddy's Dogs out in the Nation is like our favorite hot dog spot. My mom's from Brooklyn, and anytime we post Daddy's Dogs, she's like, you got to take me there when I come. So I took her there when she came this past winter, and my parents loved it. So Daddy's Dogs is another great spot to come and check out in Nashville. They also have a spot downtown in Printers Alley that's open late nights on the weekends, and that's walkable from the Broadway area.
I like Printer's Alley a lot, by the way. I
That's
like
cool.
it's yeah. We went to Skulls down in Printer's
Yeah.
Alley when that was a really cool experience because it's like
Hmm.
we walked in there like because we were sorry to get off track here, but
No, you're
we were
cool.
on Broadway. We were not totally with it, and I was like, let's go to Printer's Alley. So we walk over to Printer's Alley and we start going through and we find Skulls and we like open the door and there's a guy standing there and he's just like, do you have a reservation? It was like 10 o'clock at night and we said no, like we're just two drunkies. And he's like, well, the next, available seating's not till like 11:15 or like some ridiculous thing. We're like, okay, see ya. So then we made reservations for the next night and went and ate dinner there and it was phenomenal. So Printers Alley and we, just walking up and down there was just really cool and just away from a lot of like I like Broadway, don't get me wrong, but just away from a lot of like that stuff. So sorry to cut you off.
It's still a fun, like, no, that's cool. It's still a fun party vibe. There's some live music joints there, but yeah, it's definitely not as crowded or well known as Broadway. So it's, if you kind of want to still be in the downtown vibe and be in the live music scene, it's a really cool spot to go check out and have a drink. Like Alley Taps is another bar there. I'm not sure if you popped in there, but they usually have songwriters play their original music there on the weekends. But if you want something more high end when you're coming to town, 404 Kitchen is one of our favorite spots for a nice dinner. They also have a bar downstairs called Gertie's. It's part of the same restaurant. It's different name, Gertie's Bar. They have like 600 different whiskeys. So if you're a whiskey person, that's definitely the place to go and try it out.
You're speaking my language, man. You're speaking my language for sure.
And then if you're a cocktail person, our absolute favorite cocktail place in all of Nashville and probably all of everywhere is called the Patterson House. And that's up towards the Midtown area. It's a speakeasy where the first time we visited Nashville, we took an Uber there. The guy dropped us off and we are like, I don't think this is it. Because it was a house. And he's like, no, this is it. Like I've dropped people off here before. You just go up to the steps. So you go up to the steps, you walk in the front door and it's like you're in someone's living room, but there's a hostess stand. So then they check you in there and then they bring you behind the curtains to the bar, and the bar's amazing. They can make like any drink there. The bartenders are really cool too. So that's a highly recommended experience if you come to Nashville. If you're on the weekends, definitely make a reservation because I think the cat's out of the bag a little bit on that one. So it's tough to walk in, but.
Right. Very cool. Yeah. What's like the I have my favorite hot chicken spot, and I've asked this to a couple Nashville folks that I've had on the show prior, but like, what's your hot chicken spot? I feel like that's a contentious thing. No, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hattie B's is our go-to for hot chicken, but we also like Prince's. It's just a little tough to get. They have the truck actually at Old Smoky. So if you went there, I don't know if you had Prince's hot chicken out of the truck there.
Well, I saw it out in the thing, but we wound up not eating there. I'm a Bolton's guy. I like Bolton's. I think Bolton's. I like the dusted. Like I like Hattie B's, don't get me wrong, but I think like the sauce, the hot sauce, it just kind of like sits in my stomach and like burns. And at least Bolton's, when you eat it, it like lights your mouth on fire and then you're done. You know what I mean? Like you don't get really like that residual acid reflux, but that's just me, and like, I don't pretend to be an expert. You're the guy. So I'm leaning on you there.
I definitely am not the hot chicken expert. There are a ton of foodies in Nashville that are like from Nashville, and they probably would like think I'm an idiot for saying like Hattie B's. Like I like Hattie B's. Like,
no, Hattie B's is delicious. It's fantastic.
I think also part of the reason why Hattie B's gets a bad rap in like the foodie community and like among locals potentially here in Nashville is because like they've leveraged their success, which I commend them for doing. And they've expanded. So they're out in Las Vegas, they're opening up in Texas, they're in Alabama, out in Western Tennessee. So they've grown their brand just outside of Nashville. And I feel like people are like, well, they're just leveraging the Nashville hot chicken name to do that. But they've obviously have cracked something. They have fun branding. They have good chicken. So I like Hattie B's.
Yeah. No,
always consistent too. That's our thing. Is like some of the other hot chicken places, this is not a knock on them, but like the flavoring or the heat can fluctuate. I feel like sometimes you get hot and like it's way hotter than the last time you got hot. Hattie B's has always seemed to have a pretty consistent heat level, which is
maybe the guy's having a bad day and he's like, screw this guy, and he's like shaking the stuff on there or whatever. So so those are all great. I mean, I already wrote them down, so the next time we go, we're checking off each one of these. So I appreciate that. So all right, I've kept you for a little bit longer than I told you I was going to keep you. So we're going to move this into our closing segment, which we call Under the Spotlight. So we've talked about a lot of different stuff, leaving a corporate job, the entrepreneurial journey, being an influencer, whether you like it or not, you are, and then menu, the spots in Nashville, a lot of different things. So what would be one thing that you would want the spotlighters, which is what I call my audience, to walk away from this episode with? So you are under the spotlight.
Since you probably have a pretty big audience of spotlighters who are in the corporate world, I'm going to assume that there's some out there who felt like I did, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and just kind of felt like they were stuck in a rut, maybe burning themselves out, maybe not the happiest with their life, and felt like they were doing something that they were doing it for the money or for the wrong reasons. I would say, follow your dreams and make sure to prioritize yourself and make sure you make yourself happy. So it's really scary to leave the corporate world, no doubt about that. But sometimes it's the right move, and you just got to listen to yourself. So.
Yeah. And whatever you do, you got to go all in, right? I mean, you got to commit, and you obviously committed. You moved to a different part of the country just because you had gone on vacation there. And I'm sure going on vacation in Nashville is a lot different than living in Nashville. Like I said, before we actually started recording, you said you live like right around the corner from Peg Leg. And I said, if I lived anywhere near Peg Leg, I might be 600 pounds just because I just can't help myself. Like, I am that guy. So, all right. So let's hit them with the links. If people need more Dan, they need more Wicked Tasty, they need more menu, they want to learn more about it, where can they go to get more of that stuff?
Yep. So our Instagram handle is just @WickedTasty. And that's for the Wicked Tasty page. And then if you want anything on the menu side, all of our social handles across every platform is @TheBetterMenu. And our website is www.wickedtasty.menu.
Got it. All right. And I will put all those in the show notes, like always, as well as my show notes. My email address, themorningspotlight@gmail.com, and the website, themorningspotlight.com, will be in the show notes as well. If for some reason you want to reach out to me to connect with Dan, I'd be happy to make that connection too. Go ahead.
And I'll also just throw out there, for you, and if anyone else ever visits Nashville, feel free to just send us a message on the Wicked Tasty page and say, hey, I'm looking for this type of food, or what do you recommend? Happy to work with you and just point you in the right direction. We love that kind of things. I think that's part of what makes the Wicked Tasty page fun. So definitely don't hesitate to just shoot us a message on Wicked Tasty and say, hey, like, help me find a few cool places to eat and drink.
Yeah. Well, when I come back, we'll go do that 600 whiskey thing. We'll drink them all. We'll have all of them.
Let's do it.
We'll try them. We're just here for a tasting. Yeah. Give me 600 whiskeys, please. Awesome. Dan, I appreciate this. This is, a little bit different than what we normally do, but I think it really could resonate with a lot of people that are in the audience, because a lot of my audience members are entrepreneurs. I know that for a fact. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and joining us here on the show. So I hope you had a good experience, and thank you for coming on with us.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Mike. It was a blast.
Awesome, man. And the Spotlighters, thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.